Developing tonight, the National Guard and police on alert on a frigid and snowy night in Ferguson, Missouri, bracing for what could develop into a third night of dangerous protests. Welcome to the Kelly File Special. I'm Shannon Bream in for Megan Kelly. Some 48 hours since the announcement, Officer Darren Wilson would not be indicted in the shooting death of 18-year-old Michael Brown. The scene in Ferguson appears to be relatively calm. Just last night, we witnessed shots fired, dozens of arrests, even a police car being torched. The governor today saying he's continuing to monitor the situation closely, saying the actions of the National Guard have been helpful. But some feel the governor sent in the troops far too late. The former Ferguson mayor even calling for the governor's resignation today. Listen.
He failed the city of Ferguson. He failed the state of Missouri. He should resign.
We have a powerful lineup for you tonight. Governor Mike Huckabee and Judge Alex Farrar. But we begin with Mike Tobin, who was live on the ground tonight in Ferguson. Hello, Mike.
Hi there. It's pretty slow out here, largely due to the weather right now. You've got this wet, miserable snow coming down. And because of that, you can see the number of demonstrators has picked up a little bit throughout the evening, but it's pretty small. What is picking up as evening goes on is their volume. Now, you contrast them to the National Guard, who's out here in this bad weather the night before the holiday. They're standing sentry as their mission would dictate in these conditions. We just saw them change out shifts. So there are more guardsmen here nearby, but it looks like some of them have the opportunity to go inside and warm up as they change out the shifts. Local police do say that there are some demonstrations planned. They don't know if they'll really materialize in this miserable weather, and everything could change if some of these outsiders, as they're described, show up on the scene and start some trouble.
And Mike, you have been there for several nights from the night that this really was explosive, that first night. Tell us, in your opinion, and from what you're seeing there on the ground, the difference that the National Guard has made and your impression about whether they could have had an influence on what happened just after the announcement.
Well, I think the one thing that people don't understand about the National Guard and the role they play is they would never be the tip of the spear. They would never be out in the front lines. What you have the National Guard do, since they've been here, even over the summers, they come and they do more of the backup roles. They'll secure the command center. You can see right now they're securing the Ferguson City Police Department. They'll secure some structures. That frees up the different police officers here locally who have been training for months now, specifically how to deal with the crowds and try to specifically cater their training to the intelligence that has been developed out here.
All right, Mike Tobin live on the scene in Ferguson. Thank you, Mike. So what other steps could the governor have taken to prevent the worst of the violence in Ferguson? Former Arkansas Governor Mike Huckabee is the host of Huckabee right here on the Fox News Channel. Governor, good to see you tonight.
Thank you. Great to be with you, Shannon.
Can you give us any sort of context as a former governor yourself about what authority you have to call in the National Guard, how that would be used? We know that the governor had already declared a state of emergency, so it seemed like those things were teed up and ready to go. But when the moment came and people were calling for it, at least that first night, the governor didn't activate them.
Well, and I think that's something he's going to have to answer for, because it was very clear that this was an explosive situation. You had people that were coming in from all over the country who were already lined up, geared up to protest, and not just protest, but end up creating a real violent situation. What a governor can do is to call the resources of the National Guard. He's their commander-in-chief. What you don't want to do is to put the National Guard, as Mike Tobin so accurately stated, as the tip of the spear, because they're not police officers. They don't perform that duty. They can provide crowd control. They can provide a sense of security. They will provide a human wall. There's a lot of things they can do, but you don't want to put a military presence in the sense of putting guns in their hands and put them right in the very front of riot control. That is a police function. So why the governor didn't deploy more of those troops the first night, only he can answer. I certainly can't, because it's pretty obvious he should have.
Do you think that part of this was the issue of political correctness? There's been much made of police militarization. That's the police force we're talking about. But you put National Guard troops on the streets there in their fatigues, in their uniforms, and it seems to spark more of those conversations about the level of force or the level of presentation of officers, of guardsmen, with respect to the protesters.
Well, I think we all would agree that militarization, if you're going to be serving divorce papers, is absurd. To go battering down somebody's door at 2 a.m., shooting their dog and scaring the daylights out of a family, or if you're just simply doing a search for, some stolen property, that's an overkill. But what we're talking about here is stopping a riot. This is where people's property is destroyed, people's lives are in danger. At that point, you want the police to escalate. You want them to take it as far as it has to go to let people know that there is a difference between law and order and chaos, and that you're not going to degenerate a community into chaos and allow people to burn not only the property of other people, but potentially, maybe inadvertently, but kill people because of their violent behavior.
I want to play a little bit of what the Lieutenant Governor Peter Kinder had to say last night about these questions about the governor and the delay in making this call.
It is not political when a nonpartisan elected mayor of Ferguson is desperately trying to reach the governor of Missouri and he can't get his calls returned by anyone in the governor's office. The executive power as commander-in-chief of the Missouri National Guard resides in the chief executive's office. That's the governor. Why don't you ask him where he was last night? Was he in a command center? Where was he? Why did they hold the guard back? Let's get some real answers to those questions.
Governor Huckabee, you mentioned off the top that he may have to answer questions about this. He may have to explain. Do you think he'll ever really be called to account for that? And, you know, possibly from those business owners who lost everything?
I think he will. I think the legislature of Missouri is likely to call him. He doesn't have to go to the legislature to speak. But here's the thing. There normally in this kind of situation would be a command center set up. The governor would be in charge of coordinating. He would coordinate with the National Guard, the state police, the local county, and the local city, because somebody has to oversee that. And typically in this situation that is escalated to that, it would be the governor. Why this governor was absent during this process and was not on top of it and being the lead spokesperson is frankly beyond me. It's not anything that I have an experience with in terms of sort of being absent on a case like this. I can't imagine it. I truly cannot.
Well, quickly, I want to mention this because it seems strange to me that the mayor said that he was calling the governor. He couldn't get anybody with the governor's staff to answer him. He started calling the Missouri Speaker of the House and Majority Leader and other people that really don't have the authority to help him. Is that strange to you that the governor, in the midst of all of this, knowing that decision was coming, would be unreachable to the mayor of Ferguson?
Inexplicable, Shannon, is the word. Inexplicable. The governor should have been calling the mayor, for heaven's sakes. Mayor shouldn't have had to call the governor. The governor should have, if not physically been there, been right on the phone. And I can go through so many different instances during my tenure, whether it was a tornado, whether it was some type of flood, or whether it was a school shooting, where the communication lines were absolutely open 24/7. And that county judge, that county or that city mayor knew that they could get in touch directly to the governor immediately. That call would be put through. Didn't matter what time it was, because what you want to do is contain a situation, not let it fester. And you sure don't want those local people to feel like that they're left on an island all by themselves. And that's what they obviously felt like had happened to them. Yeah, and on a night like that, when they knew what was unfolding, that's still one of the most confusing questions for me. All right, Governor Huckabee, great to see you. Thank you, sir. Happy Thanksgiving, Shannon. Thank you. And to you as well. Well, new questions over the so-called logic behind some of the protesters' arguments. Judge Alex is next on debunking almost every claim we've heard from the critics of Officer Wilson in this case as a whole. Plus, what Attorney General Eric Holder is saying about police in Ferguson and about police departments across the country that has some wondering if he owes them an apology. And we are continuing to watch protests across the U.S. now, around the world. This new video just in from London, where a large group of people gathered outside the U.S. Embassy. We're keeping an eye on this. Stay right here on The Kelly File.